and welcome to our Nuts.com Hangout, a Paleo Chat with Melissa Joulwan. Thanks for joining us. My name's Megan Remedios, and I'm the Marketing Associate at Nuts.com. We're really excited to have paleo author and blogger Melissa Joulwan with us today. So before we begin, we want everyone to know that you can tweet us questions during the Hangout using the hashtag #NuttyHangout. You can also submit questions through the Q&A app, and we'll take a few of those to answer at the end. We'll also be announcing the winners of our organic mixed nuts giveaway, so stay tuned for that at the end as well. So Melissa is the author of the best-selling cookbooks Well Fed and Well Fed Too. She writes on her blog, The Clothes Make the Girl, where she talks about her triumphs and failures in the gym, in the kitchen, and in life. Today she'll be sharing advice for adopting the paleo diet. She'll be talking about her own experiences with the paleo lifestyle, giving tips for making paleo work on a busy schedule, and a whole lot more. So to give a quick introduction to Nuts.com, we're a third-generation family-owned business selling nuts, dried fruit, cooking and baking supplies, healthy snacks, and more. Over 3,000 products in all. So let's get started. Our first question for Melissa is, for those that may not be familiar with it, what is the paleo diet?
Well, the paleo diet is both food and kind of lifestyle stuff. So let's talk about the food first. The idea is that we feel our best when we eat the way our paleo ancestors did. So that means eating animal protein, fruits and vegetables, and naturally occurring fats. So I like to start with what you can eat, but just to be ultra clear, let's also talk about what you don't eat. So no grains, which means there's no gluten, no legumes, no dairy, no added sugar, and we can come back and talk about that, and no alcohol if you're being really strictly paleo, which I realize makes it sound like it's no fun. But it really can be, and that's kind of what motivated the cookbooks.
So what inspired you to go paleo and share the experiences on your blog?
Well, there are a lot of benefits of following the paleo diet. I came to it because I was on a weight loss project, and I was a chubby kid. I was a lifelong dieter. You name a diet, I probably tried it. I had done Weight Watchers and The Zone pretty successfully and lost about 35 pounds, but I wanted to lose a little bit more. And some people that I really trust recommended that I try the paleo diet. And right around that time, I also learned that I had a nodule on my thyroid, and I had to have my thyroid removed. So without a thyroid, there are a lot of things I have to do to take extra special care of myself, and one of the best things is to keep inflammation low. The paleo diet is really awesome for helping manage your blood sugar and keep your inflammation low. And if you remind me, I'll come back to that and talk about that a little bit. But personally, I had to start eating paleo less for aesthetic reasons at that point, and more because it's really the best way to take care of myself, because I don't have a thyroid. I take thyroid hormones every day, and I need to, keep my blood sugar stable, keep inflammation down so that I feel good. As far as my blog goes, I started my blog just to entertain myself. Honestly, I'm one of those people who started a blog and had like 5 people in my gym class reading it. I went to CrossFit, and like the people in my class read it. And I started posting not really recipes even, just like, hey, I'm eating paleo, and this is what I ate last night, and it was really good. And then eventually I learned how to write recipes and take slightly better photos, and we realized that the recipes were the most popular pages on the site, and that's kind of what motivated the cookbook, because I realized we could reach more people if we actually had a physical book.
Yeah, that's awesome. What advice do you have for people who are looking to adopt the paleo diet?
Well, it can be a little tricky in the beginning. I mean, if you look at the list of foods that you're giving up, they're probably a lot of people's favorites. I mean, if you take out grains, which means bread, which means dough, and you take out dairy, you don't have pizza. I mean, let's just start right there. Like, no pizza is like the big bad news headline when you first start. So my advice is, there are a couple points. One is to make it as easy on yourself in the beginning as you can. There are certainly wonderful cookbooks out there. In addition to Well Fed and Well Fed 2, there are a lot of great cookbooks. There are amazing bloggers who are sharing recipes online. But I think if you start from protein, vegetables, and healthy fats just to start, it kind of alleviates some of the stress. You don't have to make complicated recipes. If you think about a classic meal like a grilled steak, a baked sweet potato, and a salad, that's a paleo meal. And that's probably something that, people watching this have eaten hundreds of times in their life. So my advice when you start is to keep it simple. The problem with, just eating steak or grilled chicken or a nice piece of grilled salmon and some vegetables on the side is that it can get boring after a while. And I think that's where recipes come in. That's where the cookbooks come in. I kind of started developing the recipes I did because I missed some of my favorite takeout. And when you start following the paleo diet, it makes it a little bit harder to eat in restaurants. You can, and I do, and you get used to it, and you realize, like, you just don't even look at the things on the menu that don't apply to you. There's a pasta section that's just, like, it may as well not even exist. So first, I would say keep it simple. Second is recruit somebody to do it with you. If you can find a whole tribe, that's great. There are plenty of resources online where you can join message boards or follow bloggers and find partners to kind of help you when things get rough. If you can find somebody in your actual house, that's even better. But sometimes it's a hard sell to people in particularly kids or stubborn husbands or stubborn wives. You might not necessarily be able to find somebody under your roof. If you can, bonus, because it makes it a lot easier when everybody else is on board. And third, I would say, after you've kind of mastered that making it simple, experiment and play around and get creative. I have so much more fun cooking now than I did before I started eating paleo. And it's kind of counterintuitive because you would think there's all these rules. How could that possibly be fun? But within the rules, I found creativity. So cooking became really, really fun for me again. So I would encourage people, after you've gotten over that initial stage of getting used to it, you might find that you're feeling really creative and learn to enjoy cooking even more.
Those are great suggestions. So on your blog, you talk about the Whole30 program. Can you tell us the difference between paleo and Whole30?
Yeah, sure. So paleo, like I said, is protein, vegetables, fruits, and naturally occurring fats. And the idea is that by eating that way, you minimize inflammation in your body and you stabilize your blood sugar. Those two things have all kinds of benefits. It improves your sleep, it helps with weight loss, helps with autoimmune conditions. It is, in my opinion, and lots of other people's opinions, the healthiest way to eat and take care of yourself. And there are different kind of flavors of paleo. There's a branch that's called primal, and primal people eat some grass-fed, full-fat dairy, sometimes a little bit of wine. They're maybe a little less strict than I would say traditional paleo. There are high-carb versions and low-carb versions. There are higher-fat versions and moderate-fat versions. You just kind of have to experiment on yourself and see what form of paleo helps you feel the best. The Whole30 program is a way to help you do that. The Whole30 is a 30-day elimination diet where you get super duper duper strict. And again, it's just protein, fruits and vegetables, naturally occurring fats. And you have to be like a label detective. So if you usually put ketchup on your homemade sweet potato fries, you have to read the label on the ketchup. And if there's added sugar, it's out for those 30 days. In a healthy paleo diet, if there's a little bit of added sugar in a salad dressing or ketchup or something, it's fine. But when you're doing the Whole30, the idea is that you eliminate all of those kind of edge cases and just really focus on the basics. And there are a few advantages to that. One, it gives your body time to heal. Most of us, if we're not following a paleo diet, are walking around with some level of inflammation. The standard American diet of lots of carbohydrates and grains can cause a lot of health issues that create inflammation. So the 30 days gives your gut time to heal. And in those 30 days, I've found that you also learn a lot about what your eating habits are. What are your triggers for when you want to snack? What causes cravings? What kind of stress makes you kind of spaz out and want to hoover your way through the food in your cabinets? So the 30 days is not meant to last forever. You do the 30 days super strict, and at the end of those 30 days, one by one, you can add in potentially problematic foods and see how they affect you, and then you know how to eat over the long term.
So
and if people are interested, they can find more information at whole30.com.
Yeah, and we can post that link afterward on the Hangout page. So you've talked about some of the benefits of being healthy, and like what are some of the other benefits that have come with following the paleo diet or the Whole30?
The biggest one for me, I think, is that for the first time in my life, I started sleeping through the night. I was one of those people who was like, I only need 5 hours of sleep. And the truth is, I could only get about 5 hours of sleep every night. And it was interrupted. It was kind of a real issue for me. I mean, my husband and I would joke, like, I'm a bad sleeper. And I just thought, that's how it is. I don't sleep. And then when I switched to paleo, I suddenly started sleeping like 7 or 8 hours a night, soundly, restfully. It's amazing. I mean, it literally changes your life when you can sleep through the whole night. And definitely eating paleo does help me manage my weight. There are amazing success stories all over the web of people who've lost huge amounts of weight and improved their health by following the paleo diet. And the other thing I've noticed is that my hair is really shiny, my skin is really clear. I'm 46, I don't have too bad bags under my eyes. So it definitely gives you that aesthetic boost because it's making you healthy from the inside out. So yeah. I think it's really powerful stuff.
That's awesome. So you do a fantastic job of making the paleo diet fit with your busy schedule. Do you have any advice for people that think they might not have enough time to cook paleo?
Yeah, and I think that that's a legitimate concern because if you are not so concerned about, the quality of the food you're eating, it's a lot easier to find food out in the world. You can go to a drive-thru or pop into any restaurant you see and grab food. You kind of lose the ability to do that when you start eating paleo. And you do have to cook a lot more food at home. One of the things that I started doing when I first started eating paleo was doing what I call hot plates. And actually, we used to call them piles, but we decided that pile wasn't a very attractive name. So now we call them hot plates. And the idea is that you cook a bunch of protein in advance. So I brown some ground beef with garlic and salt and pepper, and I put that in a BPA-free container in the fridge. And I grill a bunch of chicken thighs, and I put those in the fridge. And maybe I cook a hunk of meat in the crock pot, like a pork shoulder or something. So you have all this protein, and it's just seasoned with salt and pepper and garlic, so it will go with pretty much anything. And then I partially steam a bunch of vegetables. So a pile of broccoli, a head of cabbage, maybe some squash, roasted spaghetti squash, and you put all of those in the containers in the refrigerator. And then when it's time to eat, in about 10 minutes, you can take whatever your protein of choice is and a vegetable, throw it into a pan with some coconut oil or ghee or lard from a pig that's been pastured, and add spices, and suddenly you have this beautiful one-pan saute. It takes about 10 minutes to get on the table. And all it means is that one day a week, you have to commit about 2 or 3 hours to batch cooking. And then suddenly your refrigerator is full of raw materials. So that's probably the easiest way for people to get started. And I have, full instructions for how to do that on my website and also in my first book, Well Fed.
And speaking of your Well Fed cookbooks, you have 2 amazing cookbooks, Well Fed and Well Fed 2. Can you tell us more about what we'll find in those?
Sure. The first one, I guess the thing to know about those cookbooks, both of them, is that that's the food that my husband and I actually eat. There is nothing in those cookbooks that I kind of made up just to go in the book. All of those recipes are things that we've been eating for years. They've been tested over and over. So all the recipes work really well. So you can trust that if you invest in the ingredients and invest the time, it's going to turn out the way you want it to. The first book has, like I said, the instructions for how to do a big weekly cook-up and hot plates, which I think is great for people who are just getting started. And then there's also about 100 other recipes for things like Italian sausage and eggplant strata, which is like lasagna without the noodles and cheese. It's really good if you're craving Italian. Let's see what else. What are my other favorite? Oh, chocolate chili is like the best chili recipe ever. Promise. I've lived in Texas, so there are some pretty strong opinions about chili in Texas. I think the chocolate chili stands up to that, and that's a really popular recipe. And there's also a recipe for meat and spinach muffins, which are really great for making in advance and having on hand for snacks or breakfast or lunch. They're really delicious and super portable. So I think the first book has a lot of tips and tricks for how to kind of get your kitchen going. The second book also has a lot of quick meal ideas. There's 10 things you can put on eggs, 10 things to put on top of a burger, and 10 things you can put on top of broccoli. Those three basics, eggs, ground beef, and broccoli, you'll probably always have in your refrigerator, and if you have these lists of different things you can put on them, you will never get bored. There's also 15 kinds of meatballs in Well Fed too, and I think 8 sauces you can make from homemade mayo. And then there's about 120 other full-blown recipes. So again, there's lots of ideas in there for batch cooking. There's stuff for a lazy Sunday when you can kind of have a pot simmering on the stove all day. And in addition to the recipes, that book also has tips for how to go out and socialize when you're following the paleo lifestyle, so that you don't feel separated from your friends and so you don't feel like you never get to have any fun. And there's also a piece on how to tell true hunger from emotional appetite. And that comes directly out of doing the Whole30 and really getting in touch with when I'm eating because my body is hungry and when I'm eating because I'm bored or excited or I don't feel like people love me enough. So I think that the kind of Whole30 focused stuff in Well Fed 2 is really helpful for people who are trying to reshape their relationship with food.
Yeah, and those are really great resources, not only for people following the paleo diet, but for people looking for really clean, delicious recipes. And where do you find the inspiration for your recipes? You mentioned like sometimes when you eat out, and where else?
Yeah, I really like international food. To me, there's nothing more fun than eating Greek food and imagining going to Greece, or eating Mexican food and thinking about a trip across the border. So I really like to take traditional international recipes and figure out how to make them within the paleo framework. So they're not 100% authentic because they can't be, but they're as close as I can get to recreating the taste and the feelings associated with eating those things. One of my most popular recipes is Paleo Pad Thai, and that's in Well Fed. And I mean, it's got the flavor profile of Pad Thai, but it doesn't have a lot of the same ingredients. The noodles are replaced with spaghetti squash. Instead of a tamarind sauce, it has a sun butter sauce, so it's like peanut sauce, but it's made with sunflower seed butter. But the thing about that recipe is that it creates the same feeling in your mouth that Pad Thai does. It's creamy and sweet and luscious, but it's also packed with protein, and it doesn't have grains in it, so it's much healthier. So a lot of international recipes are my inspiration, and I also used to think about how I missed, picking up the phone and ordering a pizza, or picking up the phone and ordering Chinese food. So those kinds of things where I think about, like, I'm going to hunker down on the couch and watch a movie right now. What do I want to be eating? That's inspiration for me too. And then as I travel, I pick up ideas.
That's awesome. So if we took a look in your pantry and kitchen, what kind of paleo staples would we find there?
Well, I always, always, always have lots of grass-fed ground beef on hand because if you have ground beef, you can make a burger, you can make meatballs, you can quick brown it and throw vegetables into it and make a stir fry. So grass-fed ground beef is always either in the freezer or defrosting in my refrigerator. Um, Pastured organic eggs are another great thing to always have around. An omelet is awesome at breakfast and dinner. You can make hard-boiled eggs for snacks and grab those when you're on the run. I also always have coconut oil and grass-fed ghee so that I have two kinds of fat to cook with. Ghee is great because it's so buttery and nutty, and coconut oil has all kinds of health benefits. Both of those are really great paleo fat sources, so I always make sure I have those around. Lots of nuts, stuff from Nuts.com. I like to always have cauliflower in the refrigerator because cauliflower can be pureed, so it's like mashed potatoes. It can be turned into rice. It can be made into soup in about 20 minutes. It can be roasted, so it's super versatile. And so I like to have that around a lot. And, honestly, bags of frozen vegetables. If I'm in a hurry, I just grab a bag of chopped frozen broccoli or frozen spinach, throw it in a pan with some coconut oil, throw in some ground beef, spices, done. If you're not buying local produce, then frozen vegetables are just as good for you or sometimes better than the vegetables you'll find in your grocery store. Like if they're just trucked in from somewhere else in the country, you're probably better off with frozen because they're frozen as soon as they're picked and the nutrients stay a lot fresher. So don't feel bad if you have to use frozen vegetables sometimes. It means you're getting vegetables on your plate and it kind of saves you some hassle. And then finally, I think it is important to have treats that fit into the paleo framework. So I always have a jar of sun butter in my refrigerator because I really miss peanut butter. And to me, sun butter is about as close as you can get.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, thank you for those suggestions. And you mentioned Nuts.com products, and we know you've tried some of our products before. Can you tell us about some of your favorites?
Yeah, so in my last goodie box, I got spicy banana chips, which are amazing because they're pretty thick and crunchy, and they're cooked in coconut oil, which is amazing because lots of times banana chips and other fruits, when you buy chips like that, are cooked in canola oil, which is a no-go on the paleo diet. So I was really happy that you guys have the ones that are cooked in coconut oil, and they have cayenne on them. So when you first eat them, they're sweet and crunchy, and then it's like, bam, you get hit with this cayenne pepper. It's awesome. And I also got the kale granola, which is delicious, and the rosemary roasted pistachios, really good. So I have all of those in mason jars in my pantry, and when I need a little snack, I just grab a little handful of one of those, and it's amazing.
Yeah, that's great. So we're going to check for viewer questions. So we had a couple of questions submitted. So Shelly asked, do you have any suggestions for a lactose intolerant vegetarian who eats gluten-free, and would it be possible to follow the paleo diet as well?
Mm-hmm. So technically, like I said earlier, the paleo diet is really built around eating animal protein. But that doesn't mean that as a vegetarian you can't adopt some of the paleo principles because it will radically improve your health. So number one, I would say make sure you're getting enough protein. And if you're a vegetarian who doesn't eat fish or seafood either, then you're looking primarily at eggs because dairy is out, and things like tofu and legumes are out because the protein in them is not as good for you as animal protein. It's really hard to get at, and it comes in a package with lots of carbohydrates, which is not so great for blood sugar management. So if you're a vegetarian, I would say focus on eggs, and if you can, eat some seafood once in a while to make sure that you're getting enough protein. And the other facet of the paleo diet is not eating junky processed food. I know a lot of vegetarians who don't eat meat, but then they're eating frozen cheese pizzas and other really tasty vegetarian processed packaged foods, but they're also loaded with all kinds of junk. So I would say ditch those and really focus on high quality vegetables and fruits and getting really, really good fat sources. So if ghee is out because you're vegan, then I would say really rely on coconut oil and other coconut products and avocados, olives, like get those good fat sources in to make up for the calories that you're not necessarily getting in other areas of your diet. The Whole30 just published a story about a woman who is vegetarian, moving toward vegan, and just completed a Whole30. And I think they just put it on their site yesterday. So if people go to Whole30.com, they'll be able to find that. And they also have another post that they wrote for how to do the Whole30 as a vegetarian. So there are resources out there. You might have to make some compromises, both in what your habits are and kind of how you flex those paleo rules. But you will improve your health if you follow the guidelines of getting rid of processed food, getting rid of dairy, and really focusing on high quality protein, get the best eggs you can, really great fruits and vegetables, and really quality fat sources.
Okay, and a second question from Alessandra. She asks, what was your biggest cooking fail ever? I love your work and your recipes, but I'm always interested to know what cookbook writers consider their biggest cooking fail.
Yeah, so I just had one the other day. It's not my biggest one, but I'll share a recent one, and then I'll share the biggest one. So there's a recipe in Well Fed 2 called Silky Gingered Zucchini Soup. And I've literally been making it every week for about 2.5 years. It's one of my favorite recipes. It's really simple to make. I eat it for breakfast, lunch, dinner. It's a super simple way to get more vegetables in. I just like pour a cup of it while I'm making my breakfast, or we have a cup of it with whatever else we're having for dinner. It's just an add-on, and it's like a cup of vegetables every time we eat. It's awesome. But I just moved to Vermont, and I shop in a co-op, and the co-op didn't have any zucchini because we're not in zucchini season in Vermont anymore. I used to live in Texas, where we live right across the border from Mexico, and we're close to California, so we had like really fresh, beautiful zucchini all year long. Not the case here in Vermont. So I was like, I bet broccoli would work. So I got some broccoli, and I followed the recipe and made it with broccoli instead. And it wasn't terrible, but it really wasn't something that my husband and I wanted to each eat a big bowl of. So we suffered through a bowl of that, and that was the end of that. So recent fail, that was a new one. Probably my biggest recipe fail was when I was developing recipes for Well Fed 2. When I was in college, I had the cookbook, The Enchanted Broccoli Forest, and it's a vegetarian cookbook. I was not a vegetarian, I just liked the recipes in the book. And it's this really whimsical recipe where you cook rice and mix it with cheese and put it into a baking pan, and then you stand up broccoli in the pan like little trees, and you roast it. So you get this beautiful roasted broccoli and this cheesy, ricey dirt underneath it. And I just thought, I bet I could figure out how to make that paleo, and that would be so much fun. So I made rice out of cauliflower, and I wanted to add more protein, so I mixed it with some ground beef. And I was like, I know what would be really good is I could glue all that together by putting coconut milk curry in there. So the base would be coconut milk curry with beef, and then I would stand the broccoli trees in it. And I did it, and I put it in the oven, and I took it out of the oven, and it was like a disgusting swamp. No matter how long I baked it, it never really came together. And I was like, well, maybe it would at least taste good. Like, it doesn't matter if it doesn't look good, if it tastes good. And it was just nasty from beginning to end. There was no hope for that recipe. That was it. It was a pretty sad fail. It went straight into the trash.
Oh.
I know the sad. It was the sad broccoli.
Yeah, it's all part of the discovery process. So another question, Margaret asks, what are some of your favorite easy paleo snacks?
Well, I always think of snacks as mini meals. When you're eating paleo, you want to make sure that your snacks include protein and vegetables, just like your meals do. So if I'm in a sort of seafood mood, I like to have some boneless, skinless sardines and roll them up in a piece of nori with some cucumber. It's like instant sushi. It takes about 20 seconds to roll. You don't have to make it fancy, especially if you're eating by yourself. I also like to take some of my leftovers. So if I have a batch of chocolate chili in the fridge, I'll just heat up like a half serving for myself. If you're on the go, a piece of fruit and a packet of almond butter, like Justin's almond butter is sold in these little squeeze packs. You know, an apple and a squeeze pack of almond butter is an awesome snack. I really like cold chicken, so I make grilled chicken thighs in the grill and keep them in the fridge and cut them into strips, and then it's like little chicken fingers. And you can make a dipping sauce with homemade mayo and spices. That's a really good one to take on the run. And if I'm like super in a hurry, I'll just grab a cucumber and a handful of olives. I mean, really, if you just think about it being about half the size of a regular meal and making sure you include protein and either fruit or vegetable and a little bit of fat, you'll be golden.
Yeah, those are great suggestions. Some sound really tasty. So thank you so much, Melissa. And we are going to now announce the winners of our organic mixed nuts giveaway. So the two winners are Lori Parr and Shelly Seidman. So congratulations to the winners.
Yay!
Yeah. Yay. You can check back on our Hangout page after this to see how you can claim your prize. And you can learn more about Melissa on blog at the closed mate. We'll also be putting a link to her blog on Hangout page as well, so you can check her out. And you can find lots of paleo snacks and cooking and baking supplies on our website at Nuts.com. Thank you so much for everyone who attended today, and a very special thank you to Melissa for her awesome paleo tips and for chatting with us today.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.